Good evening and welcome to Undoing I Do with Stephanie and Ade. I'm Stephanie Hunnell, the owner of the Hunnell Law Group in Asbury Park, New Jersey, and your co-host for this evening.
And I am Adelola Sherilyn Dow, the owner of the law offices of Adelola Sherilyn Dow in Staten Island, New York. How are you, Stephanie? Happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday. I'm jealous again. You're outside. I'm stuck inside again.
Had to do it, sis. Had to do it. I ran right on outside when I came home. I was like, oh, hey, kids, bye. Ran right outside. My son was all looking out the window like, Mom?
Mommy, I haven't seen you.
It's okay. Nobody call ACS or anybody, okay? I had to come to see you all and do the show.
And
how's your week going,
That boy is also spoiled, I'm sure.
He is so spoiled, please. He will be just fine. How is your week going?
Oh, my week is going. It's going. We're going into June. I can't even believe it. I didn't even realize it was Memorial Weekend this weekend.
I know. I have no plans. I'm living a boring life. I have no plans. I'm actually moving my offices this weekend, so
that's exciting.
That will be my excitement. And but here's the solace. I heard it's going to be raining, so I'm not. Everybody's headed down the shore this weekend. All of the cars were on the parkway, jamming it up already because it's Thursday and that's weekend time.
Yep. So my office is in Asbury Park, as you know, and it's already crazy. So many people are already in town. And this weekend is when they decided to do road work on several of the roads in Asbury Park, like literally tearing up the road. So I don't know.
That's just not swift.
Anyway, when you come.
That's just not swift. We all know that everybody's going to be descending upon the Jersey Shore. So if any of you are coming down the shore, have a great time.
Enjoy.
Soak up some sun for me. So what are we talking about today?
So today we're talking about something basic, child support.
It's basic and not basic at the same daggone time.
It is. And you know what? I don't think we've had any show about child support other than talking about college.
That's true.
Yep. And so in New Jersey, child support is the right of every child. It's not the right of the parent. It's the right of the child. And that's like the basic principle of it. In New York, is it the same?
Same thing. It is not your right, mom, dad, whomever has custody of the child. This is not your right. This is the right of the child. And because of that, there's one basic thing that I always tell people, Steph, and I think we've talked about it on this show. Because it's the right of the child, you cannot legally, you can agree to anything, but you cannot enforce a waiver of child support if you try to. So let's say that, the parents have said, oh, you know what? We don't need to receive any money. Neither one of us needs to receive money from the other person. We're just going to waive this. And then, when Johnny's in your possession, you pay for whatever Johnny needs. And when Johnny's with me, I'll pay for whatever Johnny needs. If 5 years down the line, 2 years down the line, the person who's the custodial parent says, you know what? Then again, I actually do need you to run me my money or Johnny's money. Court's going to give you an order for Johnny's money.
It's true. Yep. Even no matter what your agreement says, because you're not allowed to waive that for the child. Because we do have it sometimes where people want to say, I don't want any child support from you. I don't want you to have any parenting time. And people really want to cut ties with the other parent. But that, and I've had it on the other side. I'm just trying to say, I don't know, with some tact, where they don't want to have anything to do with the child, because we've had those circumstances where there's a parent that is like, I just want to wash my hands. I'm not even 100% sure it's my child. Like, whatever their reasons are, they just want to go about their life. And they're like, I don't want anything from you. You leave me alone. I won't bother you for parenting time. But that other parent has the absolute right to come back after you and get it.
That's right. So don't be fooled, as the song says. And you know what? And you also have to realize, y'all know I'm a little bit paranoid. You all know this. We've been together a long time. Sometimes people actually do this as a way to induce you to agree to more favorable custody and parenting time terms. So they're like, oh yeah, okay, no problem. I don't want custody. I'll see Johnny every other weekend, or I'll see Johnny once a month because you're not going to look for child support, and I won't fight you for legal custody because you're not going to look for child support. Yeah, don't be fooled, because that person can come right back and ask for the exact same thing, and you'll be sitting there talking about, oh, but we had an agreement. Some things are not enforceable. Some things are what we call against public policy. And what that means is that the government has an interest in making sure that your child gets supported, no matter what your agreement says.
Right. And I think we have talked about this before, where we do the offset for child support. If you have a true 50-50 custody schedule, you can do an offset of child support in New Jersey. So if you both have the child an equal amount of time, and let's say there's a nominal number or a dollar amount that you would have to pay, one of the parties has to pay. I just saw that like right in your eye.
I'm at one with nature.
No. And so in those circumstances, there might not be a child support number. And if you can show that you're paying a certain level of expenses over and above what you would be paying, a court might say, okay, we agree. We're going to continue enforcing this no actual obligation because you're paying things. In New York, that's not the case at all, because there's no offset like that, right?
Not unless you negotiate it. There is no such thing as that kind of offset. And people try to negotiate it all the time. Sometimes you can get it. I've been successful at getting it. But that's usually where the person on the other side is either not represented or represented by somebody who's not as savvy as moi. I always have to big up myself. No, but seriously, generally that is not allowed in the law. So, even if you have, like we said before, 47% of the time that you're with this child, you're probably not going to get an offset if your adversary knows what the status of the law is.
Right. I mean, and that makes sense. When I first heard it a few months back, I think whenever we were talking about it, I just thought it was crazy, because in New Jersey, that's the law I know is New Jersey law. So when I hear something different, and it makes sense to me, because if both parents have the child, 48, 49, 50% of the time, they both have the same level of expenses for their household, for utilities, for clothing, for food, for pocket money. All of that would be pretty much equal.
Yeah. And so, and if you have the child 50% of the time, then the presumption in the law in New York is that the person who makes the most money pays the child support. And that's done at the CSSA amount. So 17% for one child, 25%, 29%, 31%, so on and so forth, right? And so, you can try to negotiate that, but the law does provide for the strict child support application. And there are judges now in that 50-50 situation. There are judges who will say, okay, let's look at the numbers. Let's really figure this out. But the CSSA does not provide for that. So, and the CSSA is the Child Support Standards Act.
So what if it's like one parent makes $50,000, the other parent makes $60,000? That's not a huge differential, and it's not a huge income for either party. The $60,000 parent under that act is paying.
Right, that's true. And in those situations, generally, I don't encounter those situations. Generally, it's really that in those situations, you usually will have people say, you know what, forget it. We're not gonna look for child support. Usually when I see people fighting for child support, it's when there's the one spouse who's making the 60 and the other spouse is making 100, 110, 120. And, there really is a significant disparity in the incomes. Generally, if there's a $10,000, even a $15,000 disparity, you're not going to be in that situation. You're really going to be more focused upon what the custody provisions are going to look like.
Okay. And so tell me the name of the act again. CC?
It's the Child Support Standards Act. So that's equivalent to Jersey Child Support Guidelines.
Guidelines, okay. Child Support Standards Act. So under the CSSA, what's included in child support?
Oh, so basically the same thing that New Jersey provides for, right? shelter, gas, electric, clothing, and generally the child's extracurriculars are included in child support, food, right? And so a lot of times we'll have people come to us and say, oh, well, my sister has it so that her husband pays all of the child's extracurriculars. And I have to say to that person, well, that was a pretty good agreement that your sister got, because that's not what the law provides for. That's not what the statute provides for.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's in New Jersey, and it's probably the same there in New York, there's a long list of all of the things that are included. There's appendices that are, huge, that talk about all of the percentages of the things, like how much utilities, the fixed costs, the fungible costs. And a lot of people are surprised at what's included, including uncovered medical expenses up to, in New Jersey, $250 per child per year.
Yeah, and that's not a thing in New York. And by the way, New Jersey guidelines are very, very specific, like literally down to percentages. What percentage of the child support pays for this, that, and the other? New York does not have such a statute, right? And so New Jersey guidelines are very particular and very in depth. New York statutes are not that in depth. So where you're talking about what is included, you're really looking at case law in order to determine that. And so, and also, New York does not have a $250 or any dollar amount that's included within the basic child support for add-on expenses, for medical expenses. So if there are if there's $500 in unreimbursed expenses, then you're splitting that $500. New Jersey will give the custodial parent the obligation to pay the first $250, and then you split the other $250.
Right. Yeah. And in New Jersey, we were talking about the percentages. I've been successful arguing motions where one parent has gone and went back to live with their parents, and they don't have a rent expense or a utility expense or anything like that. And I've been able to successfully argue that 30% that's allocated for roof expenses should not be paid, because they don't have that actual expense. And it's usually on a temporary basis or something like that.
So that is not going to be very as successful in New York, because there is no such percentage allocation. And so, I'll have clients say to me, yeah, but he or she, they don't pay rent. They're telling you that they pay $2,000 a month, but they really don't pay anything. Or you'll have somebody say, well, they don't pay anything, so shouldn't I get more money on this side because they don't have this expense and I do? No, it's 17%, 25%, 29%. That's it. Unless you can show that the child support would be unjust and unreasonable. That threshold is extremely high and is multi-factored. So it's really unlikely. And so people always say to me, so then what's the point of me giving them this daggone financial disclosure affidavit if they're not going to look at it? They're asking me how much I pay. They're asking me all my expenses. They're asking me how much money I have in the bank. Meanwhile, I'm looking at bankruptcy and you're still asking me to pay this money? The same amount of money? You're not giving me a credit? Yeah. So, you really have to show that. So there are. So here's the thing about New York. There is such a thing in New York called a cap, right? And up to this amount of money, which is currently $154,000, the presumption is that whatever the CSSA says is going to be applied to that amount of money, and then anything above the 154, a court can decide to apply the CSSA 17%. Let's say if you have one kid, or they can decide to do it differently by virtue of an analysis of factors. So a lot of people will say to me, wait a minute, this is not fair, because if I'm in Supreme Court, which is where divorces are handled, I may have a really great argument for going above the cap. But if I'm in family court, which is where our non-dissolution, mostly people who have never been married, I'm not going to have that same argument. They will normally just go up to the cap. And then to go over the cap, they'll start to look at what the child's actual needs are. And so then the inquiry as to how much is the child how much are you paying for food? How much are you paying for rent? How much is your car expense? And all of that comes more into play.
That's interesting. And, with New Jersey, we have the FD docket, which is the same as, I guess, family court there. And then the FM docket, which is the matrimonial docket, which I guess would be the same was the Supreme Court there.
Right.
But they also treat things differently. So when we're looking at an FD, which is people who are not married and they need to have a child support number set, they don't even make you do a complete disclosure. They just have a financial disclosure. It's essentially a couple of pages where you're just putting your income on there.
Yes.
I have judges that will just like right on the fly go, oh, you didn't attach anything? Okay, well, just tell me how much you make.
Yes.
And then they literally just take your it's crazy. And they take your income and they go, oh, do you pay for health insurance? Okay, how much is the total? And then they just figure it out on the fly. Does not work the same way matrimonial. You have to have the full case information statement, tax returns, W-2s, proof of bank accounts, the entire thing.
There is discovery. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
The entire thing. And then they do a full analysis, and then you don't just get the child support number, you get all of the other add-ons. The health insurance, is there going to be a share of that? Daycare, there's all of that stuff. It's so much more detailed in the matrimonial part. It's really unfair to parents, I think.
That's not fair. Yep. It's not fair to people. And where it's particularly not fair is if you're dealing with a co-parent who is self-employed and who can hide their income very easily. And that's when normally when people have W-2 jobs and W-2 income, I will almost always tell them that they don't need me. They do not need to spend the money that they're going to spend on me, which is handsome. It's a handsome amount of money to fight with their co-parent if their co-parent really does have a regular W-2 job and everybody believes that the W-2 is real. Where they do need counsel, I believe, is when they're in a non-dissolution case or a family court case, and we're concerned about whether the money is correct.
Right.
Because then you got to force the issue of discovering. And it's the same thing in New York, Steph. We have a two-page short form financial disclosure affidavit, which basically asks you nothing. And you just need to give your pay stubs and your W-2. And if you've done your taxes, you can append that too. But no proofs of anything. No proofs of anything else.
Yeah. I was telling you about a case before we jumped on, and in that same case, the judge was asking how much each person made, and the dad said, oh, I didn't make anything because I had $130,000 loss. And I said, well, we cannot do like a rough and down and dirty child support number now because he's at a loss and I need to see bank statements. We might have to have a business evaluation. You can't have $130,000 loss on your business and expect me just to accept your tax return as proof of whatever your income is. And the judge did not agree with me. The judge said, we're going to exchange tax returns and W-2s. But then she gave me a pretty decent child support number in the interim. So I'm going to just maybe wait this one out.
Yeah, so this is the thing. Yeah, so I have an opinion about that, which I'm not going to put on Facebook. But generally, judges, and our case law in the state of New York says, and case law in the state of New Jersey says the same thing, judges do not have to rely upon a self-employed person's tax return. They don't have to rely upon that person's W-2 even, because self-employed people have a ability to manipulate and hide their income. And so in that situation, do not be surprised if you start to hear the word imputation, which is the act of a court saying, well, hey, Nicole, which is the act of the court saying, you think you make this income, you make $20,000 a year? Oh yeah? I think that you can make $50,000 a year. And so this is what I'm going to base your support on. I'm going to base it on $50,000. Right? Because you can make that. You made that 2 years ago. You made that, you made even more than that 3 years ago. And that's what we're going to do. And so, if you have a judge who's, excuse me, any judges listening, y'all know my heart. And if you're listening, you're probably not this judge. If you have a judge who's lazy and doesn't want to do the work, then you may end up in a situation where you got to force a hearing. Because you can't just be taking crumbs.
No, let's talk in general. I don't want to keep talking about this case because it's still ongoing. But, when you have a situation where a person has a loss because of their income. There are some legitimate losses that we can do add backs for, and we can look at a tax return and we can do some add backs. And that's limited. If we don't see actual bank statements, we can't see if there's cash income that's coming in that's not being reported. Are there other expenses, bless you, that are coming in that are not being reported?
Right.
And I think, frankly, it's an appealable issue as well if the court doesn't allow it. And if we look back at the case law about why there's imputation of income, it's these types of situations where people are not being candid about their income information. It's the whole reason.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
People are saying, I'm getting a divorce and I'm not going to work.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, you can't get blood from a stone, hunty. That's what they're going to say. You can't get blood from a stone. Oh, yes, we will. We're going to get all the blood from the stone. Yeah. So, and this is the other thing that we haven't discussed yet. What the hell is income? Oh, but my cousin gives me this amount of money every month. I mean, they're just helping me out. Boo. That's income. That is income. If it's regular and it's offsetting your expenses, it's income. That is completely income. Oh, but I only get SSD. Yeah, that's income. I get workers' comp.
Yep.
That's income. Oh, but I get pension and my spouse has already gotten his or her share of the pension. Why do you have to include that? Because it's child support and that's income.
Yep. It might not be includable for alimony, but it's includable for child support. And by the way, all of that overtime that you're making because your child support number you think is too high and you decided to make overtime in order to make up some difference for yourself, guess what? All of that overtime is income for child support purposes. And it can calculate and it can increase your amount of child support. And off the book stuff, you know, you're cutting grass, you're cleaning houses, you know.
Exactly. And so let's say, you know, we hear a lot, oh, but overtime is not guaranteed. Okay, yeah, we know that. In New York, we do your last year. Your last tax return, your last W-2 is what it is. So if your last W-2 was really juicy, you're about to really spill that money. Now, in New Jersey, it works a little bit differently for variable income, right?
Right. So in New Jersey, there's a couple of things. So if we're looking at overtime with the W-2 or something like that, they're going to look at, depending on what time of year it is. So if it's before June, they're going to look at your last year's income W-2. If it's after June, they're going to look at your 3 most recent pay stubs. If you have fluctuating income, New Jersey is going to say, we're going to look at your last 3 to 5 years, depending on what type of income it is, to come up with an average of your income for purposes of calculating child support.
Right. Exactly. And let me ask you this. We talked about unreimbursed medical expenses. What about education? Can you be forced to pay education as a part of child support?
Absolutely. You can absolutely be forced to pay education. Unless you're, an intact family, of course. But if you are a separated family and there's higher education or, even like a mechanical course or something after high school that the child wants to take, you can be forced to pay that. You could be forced to pay for law school as a contribution.
Woo! Yeah, New Jersey is badass. I mean, listen, in New York, it's 21 and done. You're about to be on the streets. The streets are calling your name. You're going to the streets with your child support. Because at 21, that's all she wrote, unless you agreed to more. New Jersey is coming up with some Jedi mind trick stuff. And I mean, there are people like 24 years old getting child support in New Jersey.
Yes. And look, we all know how I feel about this. I pay for my own college. I absolutely don't think parents should be forced to pay for college. If you want to and you could afford it, wonderful. But you should not be forced to pay for it. New Jersey technically says that financially capable parents are required to contribute to their children's higher education. Financially capable is generally ignored. I find that courts will look at what are you making, what's your income, what's their income, and let's figure out what the percentage is, the difference between the two. And the higher income person is always paying more, always. And yeah, the person who is generally the making less money is generally the person that has custody and is fighting for this more expensive college because they only end up having to pay like 20%.
Yeah, so Bobby's going to Harvard, and it is what it is. And this is something that look, I paid for my own college too. Shout out to my mom who gave me like a little bit of money at the end of my last semester. She didn't have it, so big up to her because she really didn't have it to help me. But I see people all of the time saying, "Oh, I'll just mortgage my house. Oh, I'll just take out a pension loan, or I'll just do this, I'll just do that." And I'm like, your kids are way closer to being. You're way closer to the grave. Let's just be serious. You're way closer to the grave than your kids, and you're way closer to retirement than your kids. Your kids are going to be in a better situation as long as they don't study German polka history in school to pay these bills. And you have to have that sit down and be like, baby, we cannot afford this. This right here, this 100,000, mommy can't do it. Daddy can't do it. We can't. So now let's figure this out on what you're going to do, because there are many schools across this country that cost so much less than Ivy Leagues and Fake-a Leagues, because there's a whole bunch of Fake-a Leagues that cost just as much as Ivy League schools.
Yep.
So yeah,
California schools were so expensive. When I came to New Jersey to go to law school because New Jersey out-of-state tuition for my first year was less expensive than the law school in California. Like it's craziness. But I also think that parents need to have these conversations with their kids when they're a little bit younger. Like, because some kids might have this expectation that they're going to get their college paid for, whether they're divorced or their parents are divorced or not. They might have this expectation, and then come to, they're going into their senior year and they're like, this is all these schools I want to go to. But as a parent, I think you should have a candid conversation, or you should talk about it at least freely and openly about, your financial circumstances for college purposes, and say like, I know you're going to be going to college in like 2-3 years. Just so you know, here's where we're at.
We
might have X dollars saved, or we might not have any dollars saved. And or we have enough saved, but we want you to have some skin in the game, and so we want you to take out your loans and have some responsibility.
So I am not parent of the century, parent of the year, parent of the decade, none of that. But my daughter will be 8 in August, and I already have told her that we are not doing this whole, you're going to go for 4 years and you're going to spend $100,000 a year. We are not about that life. We're not doing that. And so here's what your choices are going to be. And she's gone to my college, and I'm like, I might not even do that. So, I know it looks nice, but you have to talk to them so that they understand, because you're going to have this 16-year-old set at going to this amazingly expensive school. And then you gotta sit down a few months before they have to make their choice, and they just got in and they're so excited, and you have to tell them you can't afford it. Have the conversation often, have the conversation early, so that you know what the deal is. And my biggest advice is, don't jam yourself up. Don't jam yourself up because you want to make them happy. Don't do it. It's a bad idea.
It's a bad idea. You have to be honest with yourself and your own finances. Last year, I finished up a college case, and the mother was like, no, my child really wants to go to this college. And a year's tuition was actually more than she made in an entire year's salary. So,
oh my gosh,
there's absolutely no way she can afford this. But of course, her ex-husband has money, so she's like, let's figure this out, because I'm going to take these loans. And hey, by the way, ex-husband, here, I took out $50,000 worth of loans. I expect you to pay 80%. No.
So will New Jersey force somebody to take out a loan to pay for college?
Well, so New Jersey will say there's a certain percentage and you're required to pay that certain percentage. However you decide to pay it is however you decide to pay it. You can be found in violation if you don't pay it. It's crazy. In my case, the mom took a loan before she filed an application. So dad was not on the hook for the loan that she'd previously taken out. But she might have to take out another loan, and dad might be on the hook for a certain percentage.
Yeah. So I had a case, I think it was actually in the beginning of last year, right at the beginning of the pandemic, and we were able to dismiss the case the same day because neither one of the parents could pay. I mean, they had some income, but both of them would have had to rely upon loans in order to pay this child's tuition. And our support magistrate, who's now living the life in Florida, shout out, you know who you are. The support magistrate said yes. So basically, I cannot force either one of you to take out loans in order to pay this. Neither one of you can. Obviously, you can't do it without this. So case dismissed. Thanks for trying. Have a nice day.
Yeah. In New Jersey, if you have certain assets, even if they're tied up and they're earmarked for your retirement, the court is going to look to you and say, you have X dollars worth of assets. We're going to look to you for a certain or a higher percentage.
This is why you need to both be on the same page. Stop the nonsense with how you can't agree and this, that, and the other. And if there's any of my clients, is one in particular who I'm thinking about right now, that the spouse will just argue over every single penny. Every single penny. Would you really rather give your money to lawyers? Because there are lawyers who will take it. At a certain point, I'm just not even engaging with you anymore. I'm just not, because I'm not willing to charge my client all of this money to engage with you on nonsense. So my bottom line with respect to child support and all of that is the statutes are what they are. But if you know that your adversary is having a hard time, whether you're the one who can pay more or not, have the discussion with them. Not everything has to be litigated to that degree. Hey, Nicole. Not everything has to be litigated to the degree. And again, hire yourself an attorney who's going to be real about what the numbers are. If your attorney says, oh, your spouse makes $100,000 and you only have one child and you need $2,500, you need him to pay the whole mortgage, sure, I'll be able to get that for you. Please run. Once again, they are a whole damn lie.
So I had a consult today. This is kind of as an aside. And the woman asked me I think this is the first time in a really long time. The woman asked me how long I've been working in family law. And so I told her I've been in family law. Yeah, I'm like, I've been in family law like 16, almost 17 years. And but then she said, she's like, okay, good. She's like, I want somebody that does this all the time. And I was like, yes, you do. By the way, you do want somebody that does this all the time, because the people that don't do it all the time, and look, I don't mean, there's a lot of people that can come in and do the work, and they do the research and they're careful about their cases. But some people that step their foot in, you're going to end up with a bad result. You're going to end up paying extracurriculars when you're not required to pay them. You're going to end up paying, an extra amount of child support that you're not required. People add things in. There's, into the child support all the time that they would not be obligated to pay, like car insurance, oh
my gosh, what is up with that? Especially in Jersey. I mean, so many of these cars, car insurance, and I mean, I'm sorry,
cell phone.
Car insurance. I remember being a teenager. My mom's car insurance got canceled because I had so many accidents. Now I am a wonderful driver and I love to drive, and you and your children will be safe in my car, so don't worry. But back then, it would have been a problem. We would have had an accident. Okay. It was just a matter of time. And my mom's car insurance got canceled. And then when she did get a company, it was like $4,000 every 6 months or something. It was something ridiculous. All because of me. So no.
Yep.
Now, if you have it, great. If you have it, great. And if you can agree and your case is going to settle based upon that, because you can agree to that, wonderful. But there are people who actually think that these are mandatory, and they're not.
What did you? My parents. Nicole, what did you say? Nicole was saying, my parents were like, "You want a car? Go to work."
I had 3 jobs, Nicole. 3 jobs. I was Yay Man. Do you remember Yay Man from In Living Color? Do you remember that? Like, I got 3 jobs, 4 jobs. Listen, that was me. I had a job at Dana Lincoln Mercury. Shout out to Ben Cognetta, rest in peace. I had a job at Wagner College. No, I had 2 jobs at Wagner College. I was a writing tutor,
Oh, wow.
and then I also was I did like oh my god, work study, and I was a secretary in the chapel. Listen, I had 3 jobs. Oh my
Girl,
gosh. My mom was like,
you had fancy
she was like,
jobs.
you better pay for your car.
Yep, I worked at a hot dog stand, like in the mall. I had to take my little quarters and get on the bus, get my own self to the mall so I could get to work, get my own self home, unless, like, I was 15. That's what I did in LA. I also worked at Burger King. I worked at like the worst job ever in the world. I worked at H Salt Fish and Chips. It's like a fish fry place where you Oh my God, it smelled so bad. And then with the oil.
I can smell the grease now.
It's horrible.
Listen. So people are like,
I
you'll
my
never do
car,
that to your
I had
daughter.
to pay my own car insurance.
So now my mom paid my car insurance, so that was a big up. But yeah, that car payment, and I wanted a new car, so I had like a lease. I had a Nissan Pathfinder. It was so cute. It was green. It was like forest green. It was so cute. I was pimping with that,
Nicole said she wouldn't be able to take that smell.
Right?
Oh my God, it was not fun.
Oh my gosh. And this is back before masks and everything. Oh my gosh, it would have been too much. So people tell me, they're like, oh, you're not going to let your kids go through that. I don't know any other way. Mm-hmm. So this will just be a natural progression. I guess you're going to have to get a job.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, Ade, you and I turned out pretty okay. We're both running our own businesses. Come on. We got a work ethic for a reason.
Yeah, kids have to have skin in the game.
By sitting on the couch.
Exactly. Kids have to have skin in the game, and they need to feel valued. I truly believe that, and it starts when you're at home. Oh, the garbage needs to be taken out, Sally. Got to clean your room. You got to do this. I mean, because what I find, and you'll probably find the same thing. You'll probably say the same thing. What I find is that nowadays a lot of these kids are about where the money goes. And it's really interesting because it wasn't that way when I was growing up. And I sometimes sit back and say, I wasn't even cognizant. My parents were divorced. I wasn't even cognizant of that kind of dynamic and who had more and who could give more or anything like that. It wouldn't have come to my mind. So, you all have to get together as parents and really figure out, hey, what kind of kid do we want to be raising here?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Wait, what?
What is she?
I'm letting you read this one.
Wait, I don't understand, Nicole. We're gonna have to.
I'm thinking that might be a typo.
Oh yeah, that might be a typo. Oh, 6. Okay. They have 6 children together. Yes. Okay, Nicole.
Yes. Now I understand.
Woo! Wait, put up the 6.
I'm just gonna leave this up here for another minute.
Oh no! See, Stephanie, Nicole. Stephanie ain't right. I was trying to correct it. Nicole. Okay.
Okay. So Nicole has 6 children together with her husband, and each of them has a chore to do, so they can learn responsibilities.
Right, learn responsibility, and do and let them have some interest in what goes on in your household. I mean, this turned into from child support to parenting, but anyway.
Yep. It's all connected.
It's all connected. And thank you all for watching Undoing I Do with Stephanie and Ade. And Nicole, I hope that former is popping too. I hope so. I'm just saying. Nicole is a newlywed.
Nicole has a great marriage going on over there.
Right. Nicole's a newlywed. Congratulations again, Nicole.
Oh, congratulations. That's awesome. And thanks for joining us again, Nicole, and everyone. See you all next Thursday.
Bye. See you then.